When I was 6 or 7 years old, I came home from school one ordinary day and me and my brother raced home to get on the computer first. I really wanted to play the same Putt-Putt demo disc that I'd played a million times already, but my brother had a different idea. I didn't know it then, but my brother was about to introduce me to a game that would shake up my entire life, RuneScape. It was 2004, a very different time. I was a little boy back then and I looked like this. Does any of this surprise you? I grew up mainly on a diet of whatever my brother was playing, and that happened to be a whole lot of Final Fantasy, 9 in particular. I knew there were games on the computer, but I wasn't really interested at the time. All I could think about was PlayStation. So when my brother introduced me to RuneScape, I got sucked in. I got to experience an online world like none I'd seen before, and I became a hench dude with blue spiky hair called Magical Chav. When I first entered RuneScape, the newest skill at the time was runecrafting. I distinctly remember spending what felt like hours in the Alcarid mine, mining iron and smithing it into plate legs to sell at the shop, desperately trying not to die to the scorpions. My brother and my cousins were pretty high-level players, as far as I remember, although I was a kid at the time, and all I really liked doing was kind of bumbling around the world, exploring this massive world map I was presented with. I did take the time to do all of the free-to-play quests, Prince Ali Rescue being a massive highlight for me. Eventually, me and my brother convinced our parents that it would be a good idea to let us have RuneScape membership, and that's where our pocket money went for about a year. When we walked through those gates to Tavali, we were blown away by just how much there was. I suddenly had so much more to explore, and explore I did. I went to the furthest reaches I possibly could, exploring as much of the map as possible, and along the way, completing what little quests I could with the little skill that I had. I was truly immersed in the game, but I didn't know what was waiting for me in that immersion. And if you want to get immersed in something, this channel has no sponsors. In fact, this channel so far has fully been supported by people on the Patreon and Twitch subscribers. If you support on the Patreon, you'll get early access to all of my videos, as well as a marked tile in my play-around house, which shows up very regularly on streams. Please consider supporting so that I can keep making videos. I truly love doing this. I kept playing RuneScape in basically the same way I had before, exploring as much as I could and completing quests where available. Eventually, I came across the recruitment drive quest. In this quest, there's a stage that you get to where there is a knight that claims he cannot be killed by any man. So you need to find a way to defeat him. If you're not already a woman, you have to find a way to become one to continue the quest. It just so happens though that outside of Falador, you can find the Makeover Mage. I really had no idea what I was about to do at the time, but I ran down and paid the fee to change my character from male to female so that I could continue the quest. When I stepped out of that house and looked at my character, I felt a bit weird. Girls are icky and gross, so being one is nasty, right? But it felt, well, I didn't really know then, but it was nice. I didn't understand this at the time and just passed it off as nothing. You gotta understand, at this point, again, 2004, I had no concept of gender or, well, I mean the idea of being transgender. I wouldn't really start to learn about it until I encountered my now favourite comedian, Eddie Izzard. I thought the way that she dressed and the way that she spoke so confidently about who she was, I thought it was incredible. And she was really funny to boot, but there was that feeling again. I'll just brush that off. After I finished the quest, I made the money I needed to revert my character back as soon as possible. Something in my brain was telling me that I was being naughty, and I'd get in trouble if my family found out I was playing a girl character. From then on, until I stopped playing RuneScape for the first time, nearly every single time I logged in, I'd head to the Makeover Mage, I'd change into a girl, and then I'd put on nice clothes, and I'd keep playing how I had before. I just felt better about it. Then, before logging off, I'd switch back every single time. Now I know what I was feeling at the time was gender euphoria, but would you believe that it took me until I was 22 years old to figure that one out? There was no education on the subject. How was I supposed to know? What makes that even crazier to me is that I'm a career MMO player, and in almost all MMOs I've ever played, I defaulted to female characters. I used every excuse in the book. I want to look at a nice ass, not a dude's ass, that'd be gay. I just like playing with smaller character models so I can see more on my screen. I'm just expressing how comfortable I am with my masculinity. I was a clown. A complete idiot. Again though, it's not entirely my fault, and this is why we need education on this kind of subject. I felt things I had no way of communicating or understanding. I felt broken, wrong, and ashamed. It doesn't have to be like that, and it brings me a lot of comfort and joy to see that kids these days seem to be getting a proper education, for the most part, unless you're in like Texas. Proper education and events like Pride are immensely important. I spent my teenage years and early adulthood lost, trying to be someone I wasn't because I had no idea how to unpack those feelings in a productive way. And it's not like I feel like I was born in the wrong body. I mean, I think that's a poor excuse, and just the way that trans people explain how they feel to doctors so that they give us the medicine we need. It's more a fact that I knew something was wrong with the way I was living my life, but because there was no education, and because I didn't often get to go to Pride events, I had no idea. Every time I created a new character in a game though, even in first-person shooters like Halo, I'd switch to a female character if it was an option. I often didn't really know why myself, it just felt right. I was just picking the character I felt more connected to. In their 2018 paper, Virtual Avatars, Trans Experiences of Ideal Selves Through Gaming, Baldwin suggests that the virtual world itself becomes a site for identity construction, where users are free to experiment with and perform idealized or alternative selves. Now, I'm not saying this is what I did, but really think about how you pick the characters that you play in games. Sometimes it really is just an innocuous choice. Baldwin finds as much in their paper that some people really do just go with the vibes. But more than 2/3 explicitly stated they have used video game avatars to experiment with their ideal physical presentations. Most explicitly stated they were giving avatars the characteristics they wished they could possess in their physical bodies. One respondent described his avatar as an inner me, while another referred to his as an extension of myself. I quit RuneScape several times, only ever playing for a short stint before returning to WoW, which generally was my MMO home for a very long time. It's only really now, with the context of this study, that I can see what I was doing. In WoW, I've always mained orc dudes. I love orcs in WoW, and I can promise you I do not want to be a big orc dude in real life. But those characters were always orcs because I thought they looked cool. But a majority of my alternative characters were women that I hid on different servers so that my guildmates wouldn't find out. I was a raider. I was desperately trying to grind out my legendary cloak before the end of Mr. Pandaria, and I really needed that mythic Garrosh kill for the heirloom. I was an anxious little kid. I was scared that people would reject me if they found out how I truly felt and about my secret characters. I often used to mask my feelings with humour, joking about getting a sex change when I was 21 years old, as if that's the easiest thing in the world. I was always using that humour to hide myself. Those alt characters to hide the inner me. I couldn't let anyone know who I really was. I had to ignore that feeling. If I ignored it for long enough, it would go away. Right? In 2018, I came back to RuneScape. I had actually made the account in 2016, but I only really played for a weekend, and a couple years later some friends were getting into it, so I figured I'd join them. A very long time had passed. I was a different person. I was nearly finished with university, I'd gone through several relationships and breakups. I'd really fumbled my way through my teenage and early adult years. I was at this point a generally sad, confused adult. In RuneScape, I found a deep nostalgia that I loved to wallow in. A feeling that helped me forget what was going on in my mind and remember the good old times. But that deeper feeling was always there. Every time I looked in the mirror, every time I went outside for a smoke at midnight and stared up at the sky. When I finally got members on old school RuneScape, I kind of did a world tour of all the places that I used to visit when I was a kid, and eventually I started going through the quests so I could get Barrow's gloves, and eventually I came up against Recruitment Drive. I had to change to a woman to beat the quest. I very, very quickly changed back. I felt something that hadn't been that palpable for a long time. Something was happening in that small house just outside of Falador. The makeover mage was doing something that before I never understood. And now I feared. What was that feeling? Where did it come from? Why does it feel good? Who am I? Towards the end of 2019, I hit a mental low point. Something was very, very wrong with me, but I didn't know what. I figured I was depressed and should probably look into help for that, but it just didn't really feel like the right answer. One day I logged back on, I teleported to Falador, I climbed over the broken wall and ran to that small house. I stepped inside and I changed my character's gender for what would be the last time. I had to face this head on. I played it off with my friends as if it was just some funny joke, and they didn't care or even question that my character was female. They just seemed a bit confused about me trying to play it off as something humorous or silly. It was okay. That feeling was myself. It felt good because there was no judgment here. The makeover mage made it okay. They might have used magical means, but it seemed normal, ordinary in this world. I wasn't broken. I wasn't weird. I wasn't wrong. It was okay, and that's an immense impact that I will never forget. Jagex probably didn't really intend this, but the makeover mage showed me, and probably many other trans people, for the first time, that it's okay to be you. The mage was always there, no questions asked. It seems there's a precedent for this kind of thing happening as well. Baldwin found that one person surveyed in the study wrote, "I remember Professor Birch of Pokemon Sapphire fondly being the first person to ask me, 'Are you a boy or a girl?' and then accepting my answer without objections." A couple weeks after changing my character, a manager at work was getting married, and in organising a hen party, all the men were asked to dress as women. For a laugh. I put a frankly confusing amount of effort into how I looked, and on that night, I'd never felt so amazing. Everyone complimented me on my outfit and said nice things about how I looked. It was something I'd never felt before. Acceptance. 2 weeks later, I came out to myself. Nearly a year after that, I came out publicly, and I've never been happier. Life is still hard, and there's a lot of day-to-day problems I have to deal with still, but at the very least, I'm satisfied in who I am. For the first time in my life, I can love myself fully, and I'm able to tackle those general life problems that everyone else does without having to deal with my own hang-ups first. Obviously that Hindu was an inciting incident, but the impact that the makeover mage had, forcing me to tackle that feeling head on before I really felt like I was ready, there will never be another NPC that has that huge an impact on me. And I can promise you that I'm not alone. And I promise you, if you're out there struggling with the same thing, you're not alone either. I think there's space for a lot of different views on this. Like Baldwin found in that study, people really do just play characters for the fun of it like I do with orcs. But there are a great many who, like me, use virtual worlds as safe spaces to explore their identity. Some people who probably don't even know it yet. I hope that if you're in the statistical minority that made it this far into the video, you can at least come away with an open mind to examine the way you choose the characters you play in games. You never know what your subconscious is sweeping under the rug, and no matter what you find under there, happy Pride Month, whoever you are. As a transgender person online, I do get quite a lot of hate, but it's well and truly made up for with the lovely, wonderful communities that I hang around with. If you're LGBT+, or just want a nice, safe space online, away from the vocal minority of nutjobs who make their own insecurities everyone else's problem, then feel free to join the Discord down in the description below. We have a pretty vibrant community, and there's a great amount of people who are very passionate about old school RuneScape. If you want something maybe a little less edgy and probably a lot nicer, then I can't recommend the Rainbow Collective enough. There's a ton of lovely folk in there who treat each other with the utmost kindness and respect. It's probably the nicest online space I've ever found. A massive, massive thank you once again to the supporters on Twitch and Patreon. Their support has helped to cover me moving house after I got evicted at the start of the year. It's a situation which otherwise would have been completely unaffordable for me and my partner, so thank you, like, so much. If you sub to the Patreon at the Infernal tier or higher, you get previews of all of my videos, and you get a marked tile in my play-around house. Those tiles show up very regularly on my live streams. Links to everything down below. Thank you for watching. Happy Pride Month.
Ooh.